If there is one thing sports fans love, it is fantasizing about the best athletes of this era taking on the superstars of the past. In football, fans dream about Messi taking on Pelé. In basketball, mouths water at the prospect of Michael Jordan versus Enes Kanter. And in chess, what could be more exciting than thinking about the titanic clash between Ruben Fine and Andrei Esipenko? What, no chess fans out there? Philistines. The thing about WWE is that these intergenerational matches aren't just possible, they happen on the regular. It is woven into the fabric of the business that an older veteran puts over a younger performer on their way, which has led to plenty of amazing spectacles over the years. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 biggest generation versus generation matches in WWE history. Join us! Number 10, Vince McMahon versus Shane McMahon. In terms of intergenerational matches, this one fits the bill quite literally, as it involves a father beating the ever-loving snot out of his own son. The street fight between Vince McMahon and his son Shane from WrestleMania X7 is now the stuff of wrestling legend. After tormenting his family by drugging his wife Linda and taking on TRISH Stratus as a mistress, Vinnie Mac finally got his comeuppance during this absolutely wild fight. There were chair shots, elbow drops, slaps, Mick Foley, and perhaps the greatest WrestleMania moment of all time, Linda McMahon slowly rising from her chair to kick her no-good husband square in the nuts. You think I'm kidding? I'm not. The charisma void that is Linda McMahon got a goddamn Road Warrior pop here. In the end, Shane got the win over his old man and put his fiendish plot to rest. I mean, yeah, Vince might have ended up standing tall at the end of the night with the new WWE champion Stone Cold Steve Austin, but there was a good hour or so where we thought he had finally hit rock bottom. No pun intended. The McMahon family soap opera might be responsible for some of the worst content in all of WWE, but when done right, it delivered absolute gold. Number 9, Kevin Owens versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. When rumors began to circulate at the beginning of 2022 that Stone Cold Steve Austin might be in a match at the upcoming WrestleMania 38, many fans quickly dismissed them. Austin hadn't had a match in nearly 20 years, he was getting on in years, and had a famously knackered, well, everything. Surely a comeback was off the cards. Well, if 2022 proved one thing, it's that anything can happen in the world of pro wrestling. It was announced that Stone Cold would be a guest on a WrestleMania edition of the KO show hosted by Kevin Owens. However, Owens revealed that this was all a ruse to lure Austin to the ring, and the match was on. Against all the odds, a 57-year-old Austin put on a stonker of a performance, hanging with one of the best wrestlers of the current crop. He ended up beating Owens with, well, what else, a Stone Cold Stunner. Owens has drawn many comparisons to the Texas Rattlesnake over his career. Both are brawlers with a ferocious attitude and a sharp tongue, with Owens even adopting the Stunner as a finisher in recent years. Seeing the two square off was a dream come true for many, and a perfect return for one of the all-time greats. Number 8, Jimmy Snuka versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania 7. With the power of hindsight, the most important match on the card for WrestleMania 7 was a 4 minutes and 20-second long undercard encounter. Jimmy Superfly Snuka's prime years for WWE were in the early to mid-1980s, where he famously jumped off a steel cage onto Don Morocco at Madison Square Garden. He's also famous for some other stuff, but we're not going to get into that right now because it'll drag down the tone of the entire video. By the time Mania 7 rolled around, Snuka was 47 years old, the wrestling equivalent of 101 at the time. Meanwhile, his opponent The Undertaker turned 26 on the day of the show itself. His birthday present was a victory over Snuka that kickstarted one of the most important parts of his wrestling legacy. Undertaker would go unbeaten at WrestleMania for the next 23 years, with the streak becoming a reason to buy the show of shows all by itself. Having the young Taker go over a legend like Snuka in his very first WrestleMania match helped set him up for big things in the company that year. However, few could have predicted just how monumental this match would seem in the decades that followed. Number 7, Shawn Michaels versus Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan was the guy in WWE for almost the entire 1980s and the early part of the 1990s. That mantle would eventually find its way to Shawn Michaels, who led the company as one of its biggest stars for a few years in the mid to late 90s. So, when it was announced that these two legends would meet in the main event of SummerSlam 2005, fans from across the ages were delighted. Oh, how little they knew. This match is famous, or should that be infamous, for Shawn's ludicrous overselling of Hogan's offense. The Heartbreak Kid flopped around for the Hulkster like he was a puppet on a string, making the bout unintentionally hilarious as a result. The reason for this ridiculous unprofessionalism was that Hogan had apparently reneged on his promise to give HBK his win back in a mooted rematch. When he realized that this match was a one-time deal and that he was doing the JOB, Michaels decided to make Hogan's life a living hell while they shared the squared circle. In all fairness, how good would a match between these two have actually been in 2005? The Showstoppers hissy fit actually made the match so much more entertaining and ensured that it lives on in the minds of wrestling fans to this very day. Number 6, Trish Stratus vs Charlotte Flair. There aren't many bigger names in the world of women's wrestling than Trish Stratus, which is ironic because she's only 5'5". Initially used as nothing more than a bit of eye candy, Trish evolved in front of us to become one of the most competent performers of the Attitude Era. For context, being a good wrestler and a woman in this period was about as useful to your career as being a master of origami. WWE took any chance they could get to promote how great Stratus was and made her the poster girl for their women's division, as well as the standard for future performers to strive for. Well, that was until a shiny new toy arrived in the company. Charlotte Flair has been held on a similarly high pedestal since she made her main roster debut in 2015. Being the daughter of Ric Flair certainly didn't hurt, but Charlotte has defined her own legacy with a slew of excellent matches. Promos, not so much, but matches for sure. The two met in the ring at SummerSlam 2019, with the younger generation going over. It was a more than stratifying match that served as a reminder of just how far women's wrestling had come since Trish's heyday. Number 5, Randy Orton vs Cactus Jack. As well as being one of the biggest draws of the Attitude Era, Mick Foley also made a star out of Triple H at the Royal Rumble in 2000 and helped solidify Edge as a main event player with their battle at WrestleMania 22. In between those two matches, he helped a young Apex Predator find his feet and RKO whatever ceiling was hovering above his head. 23-year-old Randy Orton made it his personal mission to torment poor Mick in late 2003/early 2004. He kicked Foley down some stairs, which led to Mick taking Randy out of the Royal Rumble, which led to the Rock and Sock Connection reforming to take on Evolution at WrestleMania 20. After all that, the feud was basically put to bed at Backlash 2004. Except that bed was full of barbed wire and thumbtacks. A semi-retired Foley, performing as Cactus Jack, challenged Orton for the Intercontinental Championship in a hardcore match. This was Cactus Jack's speciality match, but the Legend Killer was able to overcome the legend, how apt, and emerge on the other side of this brutal encounter a made man. Number 4, Triple H vs Batista. Sticking with Evolution members now, as two former components of the Great Stable found themselves face to face in the main event of WrestleMania. After a fantastically executed slow burn face turn, Batista finally turned on Triple H and Ric Flair by giving his old pals the thumbs down on an episode of Raw. Batista had just won the Royal Rumble and shockingly cashed in his shot for Tripper's World Heavyweight Championship at the biggest event of the year. And WrestleMania 21 was the night of young emerging talent. Randy Orton put on a great performance against The Undertaker, John Cena beats JBL to become WWE Champion, and The Animal closed out the night by taking down the Cerebral Assassin to become World Champion for the very first time. It's a bit of a shame that the match itself left a lot to be desired, but let's not dwell on that right now. While Cena beating JBL might have had larger ramifications for wrestling going forward, the story between Hunter and Dave's match is what puts it on this list. Evolution was the past, present, and future all coming together. And now, the future was the present, which is pretty damn poetic if you ask me. Number 3, Brock Lesnar vs The Rock. Get ready to hear the words The Rock over and over again as he crops up in every entry from now until the end of the list. SummerSlam 2002 is considered by many to be the greatest incarnation of the show. Kurt Angle defeated Rey Mysterio in a blistering opener, Shawn Michaels made his in-ring return, and who could forget the all-time classic that was Spike Dudley versus Steven Richards on the pre-show? I certainly won't, and you can't make me. The show ended with The Rock defending his undisputed WWE Championship against the next big thing, Brock Lesnar. The Beast had debuted for the company just 5 months earlier and was already facing one of its biggest stars for the top prize. After a great back-and-forth encounter, Brock pinned Rock with an F5 to become the youngest world champion in WWE history at the time. This match made perfect sense. Rock was stepping away from wrestling full-time to take on Tinseltown, while Brock was the next big thing. Number 2, The Rock vs. John Cena. After conquering the world of Hollywood, Rocky made his live return to Monday Night Raw for the first time in over 7 years in February of 2011. This was seemingly to set him up as the guest host for WrestleMania 27, but in reality, it was actually sowing the seeds for the following year's event. Following the all-time great closer between The Miz and John Cena, that was sarcasm by the way, Rock got into it with Cena on Raw. The Great One had basically cost Cena the WWE Championship in the battle, and now Big Match John wanted revenge. This set up the next year's WrestleMania main event, The Rock vs. John Cena, the Attitude Era versus the PG Era, Loud and Rowdy versus Squeaky Clean, Black Adam versus Ferdinand the Bull. This was absolutely huge. After 12 months of build, that was actually 3 months of build spread out over a year, the two icons came face to face. In the end, the past killed the present when Rock beat Cena with a rock bottom, giving fans a scene that truly lived up to the tagline, once in a lifetime. Again, that was sarcasm. Number 1, The Rock vs. Hulk Hogan. He put over the future, tangled with the biggest star of the modern age, and now the time has come to talk about Rock versus the ghost of wrestling past. After 9 years trying to become a movie star and getting good use out of Ted Turner's checkbook, Hulk Hogan made his return to the company he helped build when he came back to WWE at No Way Out 2002. Almost immediately, he was inserted into a feud with one of his successors, as Hogan vs. The Rock was booked for the upcoming WrestleMania 18. While some fans wanted Hogan to take on Steve Austin at the event, it could be argued that Rock was actually a better pick. Rock was perhaps more of a showman than Austin, maybe better able to match Hogan's ability to control a crowd. And the decision paid off with one of the greatest wrestling spectacles of all time. Although he was the heel, the Toronto crowd overwhelmingly cheered the Hulkster. This completely flipped the match's dynamic on its head as the fans ravenously ate up everything Hogan did. A match made solely on star power, Rock vs. Hogan at WrestleMania remains one of the best viewing experiences a wrestling fan can get, this side of Spike Dudley vs. Steven Richards.